in burlesque we must have, but not too much. I really didn't want to join a burlesque troupe, no vaudeville actor does. If you find one in burlesque, you can be sure he got in through the starvation route. I certainly did. Maybe not exactly starvation, but when there's only one punch left in your meal ticket, it's close enough. Not only that, but I'd been locked out of an egg crate of a hotel in the thriving city of Toledo. H.I. Moss didn't care much whether I wanted to be a stripteaser or not. He thought of himself as a star builder, a sort of cross between David Belasco and Flo Ziegfeld, with a little Napoleon thrown in as an added attraction. I will personally see to it that your name is in lights on Broadway, he said to me, exactly 1/2 minute after I met him. It was my closing night in a comfort station that the defunct owners playfully called a nightclub. The lights were dim and a 5-piece orchestra pounded out tune after tune while my new boss outlined my future for me. From the routine he was giving me, it sounded like I was going into training for the ballet, or at least the Olympics. Experience, that's what you need. His eyes peering at me through bifocal glasses closed dreamily. And clothes, velvets with feathers, diamonds in your hair. The red and blue overhead lights reflected on his bald head as he raised his voice above that of the singer in the band. When he really interested me was when he got down to cases. A pay-or-play contract. Diamonds in my hair was well and good, but at that moment I was a little hungry. First you play my circuit, then you play a year in stock here in Toledo. If at the end of that time I, H.I. Moss, feel that you are ready for Broadway, you play the old opera. He waited for me to gurgle, not the old opera, with awe in my eyes. Unfortunately, I had never heard of the theater, so all I could give him was, what is the salary? From the G-String Murders by Gypsy Rose Lee. Starring a character named Gypsy Rose Lee. Read by me, Johnny Porkpie, author of The Corpse Wore Pasties, starring a character named Johnny Porkpie. Well, we're nothing if not subtle, we burlesque performers. But, folks, we've come to the part of the evening where we learn a little more about the book that brought us all here this evening. A conversation, if you will, between Karen Abbott, author of American Rose, applaud, and the director of Live at the New York Public Library, Paul Holdengraver. Please welcome them to the stage.
I feel that we should have the presence of this dress with us on stage. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I want to. Can you help me with it? Because I feel like she should be with us. And I just would like the shoes to be. Which one would you like? I think you should take this one. I just feel like. I can see where you have your hands. While we wait for Gypsy Rose Lee to come back.
I think it would only be polite since it's her 100th birthday, so.
I just felt that she was too hidden there.
Yeah, she was alone.
Are you nearly ready? Not be that complicated. Could we please have Gypsy Rose back? Thank you. It's a real pleasure and an honor to have you all here tonight. And Karen, it's a great pleasure to have you here. And it's a delight, really, to be celebrating the 100 years of Gypsy Rose Lee. So let's give her first a big hand of applause. without Gypsy Rose Lee, we wouldn't be having this evening, and Karen Abbott would not have written this book.
And by the way, her face was not usually covered by a muff, but yeah.
Well, just imagine. Use your imagination. Now, it has been said once upon a time that there's 3 deaths. The first is when the body ceases to function. The second is when the body is consigned to the grave. And the third is that moment sometime in the future when your name is spoken for the last time. Now, there is an issue here with Gypsy Rose Lee. In some way, an issue pertaining...
She's alive.
She's very movable. She's a movable feat. An issue with her name. Her name was always rather problematic for her. She changed it, and we are in no fear of ever having to have her name pronounced for the last time. In some way, your book is another book of resuscitation. Speak a little bit about Gypsy Rose Lee and her name.
Well, it's a good question. A lot of the book deals with her identity. And one of the theories is her mother was expert at forging birth certificates. And in the book, I reprint the original birth certificate. I was told by good authority by the Seattle Health Department that here's the original certificate, and Rose, Gypsy's mother, could not doctor this copy, but she made copies and doctored those. And on her birth certificate, it just says infant Hovick, baby girl Hovick. And then in handwritten, it's written Ellen June Hovick. And one of the theories, which, with Rose, she had many theories, and all of them were true. One of the theories was that she first named Gypsy Ellen June, and then when she had June, she gave that name to June, who became June Havoc, the actress, and then started calling Gypsy Rose Louise. And she went Louise for short. So it was always a question. And the giving Gypsy that name, was also giving the mother a piece of her. She sort of laid claim to Gypsy by doing that. So.
Why did you write this biography? And probably even that word might be the wrong word to use in speaking about this book. Why did you choose Gypsy Rose Lee as a subject for a book?
Well, I blame it all on my grandmother, who did not strip, although she could have, I think.
Although?
She could have, I think. She was a saucy lady. She is a saucy lady. But she told me a story about, she was only a few years younger than Gypsy. And she always told me stories about growing up during the Great Depression. And she once relayed a tale about a cousin who claims to have seen Gypsy Rose Lee perform in 1935. Now, the cousin said that Gypsy took a full 15 minutes to peel off a single glove, and that she was so damn good at it that he gladly would have given her 15 more. So this story got me thinking, who was Gypsy Rose Lee? Who could possibly take the simple act of peeling off a glove and make it so riveting that one might be compelled to watch this for a full half hour? So I spent 3 years researching that answer, research that included speaking with Gypsy's sister, the late actress June Havoc, her son, and also immersing myself for countless hours in the Gypsy's archives at the New York Public Library.
What did you learn from speaking to her sister?
It was like being transported back to the 1920s and 30s. I don't think I've ever had such a good time talking to somebody.
She was 94 then.
She was about 94, give or take.
Yeah.
Again, with Rose and her birth certificates, you never know. So, but she spoke a lot about Gypsy's conflicted relationship with Gypsy the Creation. Gypsy had a very divided personality, and she was also always tortured by who she was as a person and who this woman she created. The creation always gave her the things she wanted, money, power, security, but she lived in fear of her past coming back to haunt her. And if you remember the letters that her mother sent to her, you know there's quite a bit of past that was always sort of galloping behind her and threatening her to take it down, and June spoke a lot about that.
And spoke about her relationship to her sister as a relationship when you told her you were a good sister to her.
Yeah.
How did she answer that question?
She said, I was no sister to her. I was a knot in her life. And part of
Which
that...
is quite something to say. I mean, I heard the audio clip of that because you recorded that and sent me that little audio clip. It's heartbreaking in some way.
It was chilling. It was chilling. And how do you respond to that? But it was mostly talking about, there's a year that Gypsy never talked about, and June spoke about this with me, and her son spoke about this with me a little bit. After vaudeville died, and before Gypsy became the big star at Minsky's, doing her dance on the rooftop of the Republic, she had a year that was quite difficult for her. She was living on dog food, she was poor. Her son suggested that she had done things against her will, or had been forced to do things against her will, which I took to mean that maybe she had been forced to prostitute herself. And of course, this isn't the sunny picture presented in her memoir on Broadway, which is all plucky and light, and so it was. June spoke a lot about that, and June came to her for help one time. June herself was having some difficulties. She was doing the marathon dance circuit, which was its own set of horrors, its own strange burlesque. And she went to Gypsy for help, and Gypsy at that time had been cavorting with a bunch of gangsters, one of them being Waxy Gordon, who was associated, if anybody watches Boardwalk Empire, with Arnold Rothstein, the gangster who fixed the 1919 World Series. And June told me that Gypsy sent her to a party with these strange underworld characters who were not just innocently taking their clothes off. It was quite a seedy scene, and she never forgave Gypsy for that. She said if my sister could do that to me, she never really loved me.
And the mother, in the same vein, was rather violent.
Yeah, I mean,
she might have murdered a few people.
Just a few people. Yeah. She,
Did she?
She did. I mean, there's a photo in the book of the crime scene of one of them. But in the musical, again, in the memoir, she's never murdering anybody. There's a scene in the musical, if anybody's familiar with that, where Rose, just to save money, she was just as frugal as Gypsy was, very frugal. And to save money, they would crowd everybody in the vaudeville act in one hotel room. And one of the hotel managers threatened to evict them. And in the musical, she cries rape and gets rid of the hotel manager that way. But the real story that went around was that Rose actually fatally pushed the hotel manager out the window and claimed self-defense, and it sort of quietly went away. She was a very convincing woman, to say the least.
One of the quotations I very much love in your book, nearly as much as Eleanor Roosevelt's quotation I mentioned at the beginning, is one from H.L. Mencken, where you quote Mencken as saying, Puritanism, I mean, I find this fantastic, listen carefully, please. Puritanism, the haunting fear that someone, somewhere, may be happy. Did you like that so much you'd like me to read it again? Puritanism, the haunting fear that someone somewhere may be happy. I'm wondering what these Mencken words mean to you in the context of Gypsy Rose Lee and writing this book about an era.
Well, when burlesque really took root, I mean, it was after vaudeville was dying, and the first thing that killed vaudeville was the talking pictures. Once Al Jolson came on stage with the jazz singer in 1927, that was a huge blow to vaudeville, which up until that time had been the most popular form of entertainment in America. And the final blow to vaudeville was the Great Depression, the stock market crash. And the whole mood of the country changed, I mean, for good reason, and the country was no longer in the mood for the sunny, mindless optimism that vaudeville gave everybody. And they wanted burlesque. They wanted a different form of escapism. They wanted something dark and moody, and they wanted to go to these burlesque theaters and feel kinship with the women. These unemployed men would start lining up in the morning just to get in the burlesque shows in the evening. And, they felt this camaraderie with the women, and just equally naked. These people are equally naked and equally bearing themselves. And so that's what the country started turning to, which of course upset the Puritans, because there was a lot of fun had in the process.
But some of the Puritans probably enjoyed those shows.
Oh yes, they did.
Yeah.
They made sure that their censors and that they themselves were there at every show. Nobody was missing anything.
I would like you, as a historian of that period, to take me back in time, if you could, and tell me first of all, I'd love to be able to understand better than I do at this particular moment, what the difference between vaudeville and burlesque is. That's my first question. And my second one is, more specifically, what would a burlesque show entail? If I went to a burlesque show, what could I maybe expect, and perhaps what could surprise me? And Gypsy, as it were, was sometimes just one part of that show, as I understand it.
Vaudeville, the only thing I can really liken it to, it's like the reality TV of the 1920s. And although people back then actually had to work hard at being famous instead of just getting drunk and punching each other and rolling around and going in hot tubs. But you know, so people would find a talent, and even if it wasn't a talent, these people just invented a talent, and they practice it and practice it and practice it until they became quite good enough to charge people to see it. And June spoke a lot about vaudeville too, but one of my favorites, just to give you a vaudeville taste, was a man called the Amazing Regurgitator.
Maybe we could check him out a little bit.
Yeah.
Can we put it louder somehow?
Señores, señoras.
Swallow a baby shark and a fish, and then ask the audience which one should come up first. So.
Wow. And such innocent pleasures.
Yes. Yeah, it's just good fun.
So what else would a show entail?
A vaudeville show would, kitty acts, of which of course Dainty June and her Newsboy Songsters, and from 1923 to 1927, Dainty June and her Newsboy Songsters, headlined by June Havoc, was one of the most popular vaudeville acts in the country, and they were making like $2,500 per show, which was an astronomical sum, like $32,000 in today's dollars. And one of their numbers featured a dancing cow. And Gypsy always claimed that she was forced to work the back end of a cow, but June disputed this, and June told me, Gypsy couldn't dance that well. So.
was always a lot of rivalry between the two of them.
I think their mother did the best job she could at turning them against each other. I think there's a line in the book that says she raised her daughters like two grizzled generals preparing for war, with each other, with men, and with her, and just continued on in that path.
Now, some of your critics have worried that you have not followed a chronological order in this book, which so often in biographies particularly, one does follow in order to unpack, as it were, the subject. Why did you choose the non-chronological narrative?
I wanted to structure the book like a striptease, and part of that was revealing a little bit of this side and pulling it back a little bit, revealing a little bit more and pulling back a little bit until all was revealed. And Gypsy was just too